Hey everyone, I'm Adam, and today we have Matt on, and Matt helps businesses build. Let me redo that. Say it again.
We design retirement plans for businesses, for small businesses.
All right. Hey everyone, I'm Adam, and today we have Matt on, and Matt designs retirement plans for small businesses. Hi Matt, how you doing?
Good, Adam. How's it going?
It's good. Thank you for being on. This is something that when people are building a business that they don't really think about. So you're here to tell us everything we don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, that's what I'm here for.
Okay, so what don't I know? Like what I own a business, I have employees. Like at some point you gotta start thinking about retirement and your future. What does that process look like?
Right.
What should I be thinking about?
Yeah, sure. And every business owner across the world, the business is their baby. That's they nurture it, they build it up, they put blood, sweat, tears, and money, most money into the business. And at some point, if you look at it from the overall pie chart of your total investment philosophy, then you're putting all your eggs in one basket, basically. You need to do that as a small business owner. You need to put all your money into it and buy equipment. You need to buy more goods to be able to sell and build your income up. But at some point, like you said, creating some sort of long-term strategy for you in case you can't work. Basically, that's where the retirement plans come into place.
Right. And when we work for someone, it's just kind of done. But now we have to figure it out.
Yeah, it's most of the time it's done for you. Now you're on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
As the business owner. Yeah.
Okay. So where do we start?
So there's two questions, and it's really once you answer these two questions, you can back into what you can do. The first question is what is your motivation? What is the main priority of you starting this plan? So is it retirement savings because you want to diversify your money, for example? Do you want to save money for taxes, or is this a motivator to recruit and high quality employees that you want to keep in your company, and you want to motivate them for the longevity with you, so you don't have to keep retraining them and so on and so forth? So that's question number one. And then question number two is it's how much do you want to save? How much can you save starting out? And once you have those answers, it backs everything in, and you can kind of you can choose very easily which kind of retirement plan there are. And there's SEP IRAs, there's simple IRAs, there's multiple 401k plans. But when you have those answers, that will allow you to make that decision.
Okay, so let's go with one of those answers.
Yeah.
I have a smaller company. I have 6 to 10 employees at any time. I'm seasonal.
Okay.
I do give retirement to 2 of them, but I'm more looking for me to retire at some point and be able to live off of that.
Yeah. Okay. So the answer to that question, I guess the number one question is you want to save for retirement, and obviously tax savings is always, I think tax savings is always it's like 1A or 1B for that answer. But when you do that, and you have employees and they're full-time employees, I assume they're W-2 full-time employees, or you said it's seasonal?
Yeah, but they're W-2.
Okay. So so you technically have a part-time employee, meaning they work less than 1,000 hours a year. So the 1,000 hours a year is the key. If an employee works more than 1,000 hours per year, then you have to offer them something if you are trying to build something for yourself. And the IRS does this because it's all about fairness. Okay, fairness is the biggest thing. They want people to save for retirement. Yes, you put all your money, blood, sweat, and tears in this business, but you also have to offer it to them. So if they're under 1,000 hours, that opens up a lot of windows for you as the business owner. So the second is how much do you want to save, right? And we're assuming that you don't have to offer this to your employees, and also you definitely don't have to offer it to 1099 independent contractors. So if you're paying them, they're their own business at that point. Basically, you don't have to involve them in the plan. So if you're under 50 years old and you want to save less than $6,000 per year, just do an IRA or a Roth IRA. It takes away all those compliance requirements. You don't have, even if you had full-time employees, you do not have to offer it. It's technically an individual retirement account. It has nothing to do with you being as a business. So an IRA, if you're trying to save less than $6,000, just do it that way. If you're over 50 for 2022, you can go up to 7,000. So that's number one. Beyond that, the next step would be a simple IRA, and that gets you up to 14,000 if you're under 50. A simple IRA is very simple, if you will, and it's actually designed if you do have employees, but and they're actually quite strict. So if you have employees that earn more than $5,000 a year, and you want to offer it to them, then you probably don't want to offer a simple IRA, because you do have to offer it to them. You have to match them. There's a vesting schedule involved. So a simple IRA, if you have W-2 employees who are earning more than $5,000, it's probably not the best plan for you. But if you have 1099 contractors, then yeah, 14,000. So again, it goes into how much do you really want to save is the biggest question. And we can go up to 6 digits with these types of plans, well into $300,000 pre-tax savings, depending on. And basically, this is a 401k plan that you can stack profit sharing on top of it. You're stacking a pension on top of that. So depending on how much money you want to save, there's a plan for that.
Okay, let's say I want to save the maximum amount of money for myself. I understand that then I'm going to have to offer it to other people. What are those kind of products?
Yeah. So, and you do want to offer it to, said?
Well, I guess from what you're saying is I would have to.
Yeah. So if you have full-time, and let me take a step back actually. So, in order for you to save into a 401k plan, it's got to be earned in cash business, off the books, if you will. You can't use the off the books money to save for retirement. So, we're talking, maybe an LLC, you're an S corp, a sole proprietor, even all those can work for retirement savings. And retirement savings can use Schedule C income, W-2 or K-1 if you're a partnership. So those are that's the kind of money you can save into a 401k plan or a simple IRA or a SEP. But if you have a number of employees, and we're going back to the fairness conversation, your goal is to maximize your savings, you're going to want to build, most likely it's going to be the simple IRA, which you can get to 14,000. But if you want to get into a 401k, then you can get up to 61,000 pre-tax. And you're contributing to yourself as an employee, and then you're also contributing to yourself as an employer. But the safe harbor, there's a lot of rules involved in the 401k world. So there's traditional 401ks, and then there's safe harbor 401ks. The traditional 401k, I call it a cafeteria style plan. And those are usually used if number one goal is to retain and recruit employees, because there's so many compliance rules around it that you are not allowed to save more than 2% over what your employees are saving, even if they're all zeros. So let's say, for example, you have 10 employees and they're all eligible. They're W-2 employees. You have half of them are contributing 10% of their income, and the other half are doing 0. So that's 5% average between all 10.
Okay.
You're only allowed to do 7. So you can't max out. You're putting 7% of what you pay yourself, basically. That's the most you can put into it. So a safe 401k, and there's multiple safe harbors, there's about 4 of them. You're choosing from a preset schedule of matching investing options. Matching mean 3%, 4%. So if they have, let's just say they make $100,000 to keep it simple, you're going to match them 3%. So you're going to give them $3,000 per year, because that's 3% of 100 in plan. If you choose one of these preset matching vesting schedules, you can max out regardless. If everybody's doing 0, you can do whatever so you're allowed to max out. and the max out portion is based on you as an employee of your own company. You're also an employer, and so the first part is 20,500, and then the rest of it is 40,500 to get you up to the 61,000. So that's how much how to do, and that's technically considered profit sharing, and that's all.
Okay.
There's many ways to play profit sharing.
So you would have to figure out what your salary is in order to get that percentage to be the remainder.
Yes, yeah, and if you're an S corp, for example, an S corp, for you to contribute into a plan, any kind of plan, you have to be a W-2 employee of your own company. So if you're an S corp, you have to have a W-2. You have to pay yourself a salary, basically. If you're not an S corp and you're a sole proprietor, LLC, and you aren't paying yourself a salary, that's fine. There's a different calculation involved, but you are allowed to save as an employee and as an employer if you're a Schedule C or a K1. And K1 is, I just say it's basically it's the Schedule C for a business partnership. Is what a K1 is. So if you are one of those two, you do not have to pay yourself a W-2 salary. So a lot of this is a balance game between self-employed tax and all that I'm sure you're aware of.
Right.
So it's a balancing act. How much you want to pay yourself versus how much is that going to allow you to save, and is it worth it? What's at the end of the day, it's what's the net tax savings. A lot of the time, what is that? How much are you able to save, and what is that? How much you pay out? Sometimes it's not, 20,500 is what you can contribute. Maybe the net might be, 7,000 is because you had to pay taxes on the self-employment side.
All right.
It's
so this is all very complicated. It's better to hook up with someone, right, than to try to.
If you have employees, it's a good idea. Because there's a lot of, you have the IRS involved, you have the DOL, the Department of Labor. So you have the IRS involved, you have the Department of Labor involved, and then you have ERISA. So those are three governing entities that you have to be aware of if you have employees. And it's fairness is the biggest thing.
Right.
And that kind of comes into, why the IRS wants you to start a 401k plan. Not necessarily a simple IRA, or if you have the IRA after the name, that means it's easy to implement. There's less compliance. You don't have to have an administrator involved. You just it's turnkey, let rock and roll. If it's 401k, there's a lot more bells and whistles, but there's a lot more benefits involved in a 401k. And the IRS in 2019 multiplied the tax credits back to employers times 10, basically. So it used to be, I think it was $550 per month, per year for the first 3 years of starting a retirement plan. In 2019, they passed it, and now it goes up to $5,000 for the first 3 years of a 401k plan that you implement. And basically, you're going to get half of that, half of what your out-of-pocket expenses are back as a tax credit for the first 3 years. So, and if you have $5,000 of administration costs that you're going to be reimbursed, that's a pretty big size company, because the cost, just the idea of what the administration cost would be, but you're going to get half of that back. And then they have an additional $500 tax credit that traditionally you have employees opt into a plan, right? You have to sign a form, submit it, and then you're in. If you reverse that and you have it as an opt-out plan, you get an additional $500 flat tax credit. So they want people to save for retirement. And it's clear that what they in 2019, when they passed that law, it's called the Secure Act. That was the biggest change in the 401k industry ever.
Right. So when you say tax credit, like tax credit on what? Like per employee, or?
So there's a calculation involved, but basically it's half of your out of pocket. So when you have a third party administrator, that's who does the compliance. That's who does. They make sure you're compliant. They do your filings, your 5,500, and then there's annual testing involved. that we do behind the scenes. But the out-of-pocket costs for a 401k, not including what you're matching your employees, but the actual administration flat fee.
Okay.
So usually there's a flat fee and there's a per participant fee. And when you add those together, usually it's at most a couple $100 is what you should be paying. And that's a fairly good sized company. And half of that basically comes back to you, is basically the best way to calculate it. So half of that. So if you're out of pocket $2,000 a year, because you're paying $180 per month, then you're going to get half of that back as a tax credit. And then if you're an opt-out plan, then it's an additional $500 on top of that.
Okay, so this all sounds scary. When you're talking about it, I'm like, I wouldn't be able to like keep up on all this stuff and whatever. But that's not the point. I was getting it wrong. It's like you guys take care of all this and all the compliance and stuff.
Yeah.
We just need you, and then you tell us what to do. Hook this bank account up to this and that,
right.
and okay.
That's right. So there's 3 roles in a 401k plan, and we're talking a lot about 401k plans, and that's 401ks are the most complicated. There's a lot of wheels turning at the same time. Simple IRAs are simple. SEP IRAs are just as simple, if not even more simple. But there's 3 roles. There's the third-party administrator or the administrator, and those are the folks, and that's our role. They keep you compliant. They're the ones who they can design the plan and to make you compliant and allow you to save into these plans. They're the ones who you file your 5,500, because there's a 5,500 filing that you have to do. Sometimes your CPA does that too. And then the annual testing to make sure the fair, I call them fairness tests. They make sure that the employees are able to contribute and the employer is not over contributing. Those come more into play when you have the traditional cafeteria style 401k. So that's the administrator. The next is the investment fiduciary, who's choosing the funds inside of your plan for you, basically. There's a menu that you create for your employees, and they can pick this mutual fund, and who's choosing that and who's taking the liability off of that. That's role number 2. And the third is who's holding the money. So the custodian, the record keeper is the lingo used inside the 401k space. So the record keeper, custodian, those are the ones who, your employees log in, they create the statements, they report to the IRS, so on and so forth. Those are the 3 roles. The first 2 can be done DIY, can be done on your own if you really know what you're doing, especially if you don't have employees. It's quite easy because there's a lot less compliance needs inside of that. But the having at least the third-party administrator and having it removes the liability off of you as the employee, as the employer, because if something happens, you don't want your employees saying, you did this wrong. That's where we shoulder that. We shoulder that.
All right. So an example, let's take me. So I work with Northwestern Mutual, who has my retirement. They are they're you, right?
Yes. We are the first 2 roles.
Okay.
So yeah, go ahead.
I think Northwestern Mutual is the first 2 roles too. And then there's all their funds are from a company called American Funds.
Yeah.
And that's the third role.
So do you know what kind of plan you have? Do you have a 401k? Do you have a simple IRA?
Simples. Yeah.
Okay. So a simple only requires 2. So Northwestern Mutual is the investment fiduciary. They're the ones creating the menu for you, right? And the custodian is American Funds. They're acting as the custodian. And technically Northwestern Mutual is probably holding it, but I digress. So you do not need a third-party administrator in a simple IRA. You do not need that. We act as the administrator and the fiduciary, or sometimes just the administrator for DIYers, basically. But yes, in your instance, you have a simple IRA. You only need 2 of the roles. That's why it's simple. You don't have to have that administrator. So the simple IRA, you're probably doing a 3% match to the employees, and they're immediately vested, meaning if they walked away, the match that you give them, they can take with them right off from day one. So that is a pre-approved vesting schedule, a matching and vesting schedule. So with that, you as the employer are allowed to max out. And if you're under 50, it's 14,000 for 2022. If you're over 50, you can add another 3,000, so 17,000 for that. So that's kind of that pre-approved method where it doesn't matter what your employees are doing, you can max out.
Right.
The difference between the simple and a 401k is the 401k you can save more. You can go up to the 20,500 instead of 14, and then on top of that, you layer it and think of an upside down cake, two-tiered cake. The bottom portion is that 20,500,
Right.
and then above and beyond that is the profit sharing that gets you up to 61,000. So, and there's a lot of calculations involved in that too.
Okay, so for companies, I guess like a lot of companies get put into the simple first. Maybe
Yeah, it's a great way to great entry level plan to start off with.
How do you transition to the next one? Will employees' money be taken into their 401k, or is it separate?
It needs to be done. It needs to be done. So basically, you're only allowed to have one plan per calendar year. So, and this is a big mistake DIYers make, actually. So if you have a simple IRA, you already have it for 2022, right? You have to shut down the simple IRA by the end of the year, by the end of the year, and then start up a 401k plan in 2023 on January 1st.
Okay.
Of 2023. You cannot have more than one plan offered to your employees in the single calendar. It's in a single fiscal year, and most businesses are on a calendar year.
Right.
So you'd have to shut down the simple in order to start the 401k.
Now, does my money in my simple transfer over to my new 401k?
Yes. Yeah. So you just have to roll it over. You actually have a decision to make. You can roll that into an IRA, of a regular individual retirement account, or you can roll it and consolidate it into the 401k plan. And honestly, you'll have lower fees from custodians if you do roll over the money over into. They like to have money coming in on a startup plan, so they usually lower the fees. So they'll negotiate the fees down for you.
Okay. So in the beginning, you mentioned you could save up to, I think you said 300,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great question. Okay, so how do we do that? So this is these are high level strategies that we use, and this is kind of our sweet spot, if you will. And what I mean by that is, again, remember that I said that the two-tiered upside down cake. So add a third layer. 401ks can have things stacked on top of the 401k. Simples you cannot, for sure. So the simple is the 14,000. You cannot add profit sharing or a third layer on there. A SEP, 9 times out of 10, you cannot add anything on top of that. You definitely don't do a profit sharing. But the SEP and the 401k technically have the same contribution limits anyway. So let's assume we're doing a 401k. So you have the smallest bottom layer is the 401k. So that gets you to 20,500. Then you have the profit sharing as the second layer. That gets you up to the 61,000. Okay. The third is called a cash balance plan. It's also known as defined benefit program, a pension. Okay. That gets you, and that's age banded. So the older you are, the more you can save. So if you're up to 60 years old, 65, when you stack these up, you're going well into the 300,000 range. And this is even better done when you do not have employees. But if you have employees, we need to calculate how much you need to give them. And there's actuaries involved when you bring in a defined benefit, because what their role is, the 401k and the profit sharing is considered a defined contribution. You are defining how much you're contributing into the plan. A defined benefit is not how much you're putting in; it's defining how much you're getting on the back end, right? Because it's a pension, right? Those old school pensions that used to be around for everybody and usually aren't around anymore. But they're coming back because it's becoming a very popular way to save money on taxes. So when you have this defined benefit program, the actuary is this third party, a fourth role, if you will, and they have to maintain what interest rate needs to be held inside of the plan, how much needs to be put into it year after year, and this is kind of once a year you send it into them, and we this is something that we do for our clients, and it says, okay, you need to put in this amount of money. If you can't keep up with that interest rate that they tell you to abide by, then you as the employer actually have to put or get to put more in into the plan for that year. So if you don't keep up with that interest rate, and it's usually pretty conservative interest rate, you actually have to put more into it. And if you go above and beyond it, you don't need to. So it's this ongoing calculation. But if you're saving, 6 digits, the amount of taxes that you save in that year is tremendous. I mean,
Mhm.
6 digits, if depending on what your tax rate is. And you do not have to pay yourself 300,000 or more as a salary to get into these kind of programs, because you remember when I was saying there's employee contribution and employer contribution, right?
Yeah.
The only employee contribution you have is that bottom layer, 20,500. Everything else, the profit sharing and the cash balance plan, is considered a employer contribution. It's calculated using your salary if you're an S corp, but you don't have to be an S corp. And that's where the actuaries come in. They design the plan for you. They sign off on it as a licensed actuary, and that's it. And you're able to save these tremendous amounts of money.
Right. So what I'm gathering from this, if you can create a business where you're self-employed, or I mean, one owner, no employees, you open up all these crazy possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Traditionally, these are doctors and lawyers.
Right.
That's who made the money, who made all the money back in the day, right? They're very popular, and now we have just businesses coming out of everywhere, because the online community is allowing people to expand globally, and their income is going through the roof. And these plans are ripe for the picking, because I mean, a lot of people want to invest in their own business, right? They want to, at the same time, there's a tax play here that we need to be able to manage. So it's this balance again. What is the net tax savings? What is the net amount of money you're putting into it? And at the end of the day, it's, those two questions I asked is, how much do you want to save? And if you say as much as humanly possible, we'll find it. We'll find a way to do it. And some of these turnkey plans that are online they don't allow these high levels. You have to have an actual true third party administrator who's independent and able to kind of think outside the box.
Right. Okay. Where are you guys based out of?
We're out of Columbus, Ohio. That's our headquarters, but we're national. We're a
Right.
national company. Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to be in the same town. Like if I'm in New York, we could work together.
Oh yeah, we have clients in New York. We have clients in California. We have clients in Hawaii. So we have offices in Florida, Maryland, headquarters in Columbus, Ohio, but we are all over the country. So it's these days everything's virtual these days. It used to be, we come out and educate your employees. Now everything's done, virtually. And it saves a lot of time for the employees. So yeah, everything can be done all over the country.
Right. Okay. I got another question. It's kind of for me, but I feel a lot of people are in this situation. People own multiple businesses. Okay. You got your 401k for this one. Maybe you're self-employed over here doing stuff online, affiliate marketing, YouTube channel, whatever. How does that all
Great question.
come in?
Great. Yeah. Great question. I call this double dipping. So double dipping is not a true lingo of the industry, but I call it double dipping because, there's a lot of people who have side hustles these days. They have a day job where they're a W-2 employee of somebody else's company. They have multiple businesses because diversifying your income is just as important as diversifying your investments. And yeah, there's ways to double dip. There's a lot of regulation involved in it. It's called a controlled group. Okay, so if you have a controlled group, it's the IRS's definition if you have to involve all your companies under the same plan. Okay, so let's say, for example, you have affiliate marketing and you're doing YouTube channels and stuff like that. So realistically, you don't have any employees, right?
Right.
And you own 100% of that, and then you own 100% of your rental company, but you have W-2 employees. You cannot open up a 401k plan for only your non-employee company. You have to include it in your, you have to offer it to your employees.
Okay.
So you can't open up a solo 401k and cash balance plan and go 300,000. You cannot do that. You have to offer it to your employees. It's a really easy Google. We have a blog on that on our website. And it's an easy Google search too, IRS website, controlled groups. And one of the rules is you cannot, if you own 50% or more of a business, you're a controlled group. If you offer services to that company, you're a controlled group. So if you, for example, let's say you have a manufacturing company and then you started a company for distribution and one company is the client of the other, that's a controlled group as well. There's black and white rules, but there's a lot of gray rules. And just the best way to explain it, the IRS will always lean, I don't want to say always, most of the time the IRS is going to lean towards the employees in fairness. So if you're right on that cusp, it's going to lean to the employees. We had a client recently who, or it was not a client, actually, it was a conversation with somebody, and they owned, it was a partnership 50-50 with no employees. And then they owned 100% of another with employees, and they wanted to only do the partnership. And technically you're looking at the 50% rule, right? However, he owned 100% of this other company with the employees. That's going to be really hard to explain to the IRS, that 50% rule. If it was reversed, that might be a different story, but realistically, that's going to be considered a control group. The only way to have an ironclad definite definition, if you are a controlled group, is you have like an employment attorney who comes out and signs off saying you are not a control group, and that means they're holding the liability from the IRS in case you get audited.
Right. Could that person you're talking to drop down to 48%, say, and then alleviate that?
Yeah.
Or is that too close?
Yeah, absolutely. No, 48's fine. 50% is the rule. That's a black and white rule. But the double dipping part of it is what I was kind of explaining in the beginning. So, if you are not a control group, or let's say you have the day job, right? And you are maxing out your 401k at work, and you have your second company. You are allowed to contribute as an employer. So the employee portion, the bottom layer, the 20,500, you cannot double dip that. You can only do that one time. You can only go to 20,500 once. But the difference, the 40,500, let's say you're maxing out the 40,500, say you have a really generous boss who's maxing everything out for you, and then you have your own side company. You're allowed to double dip on that employer contribution as many times as you want. You can have 6 businesses and keep double dipping if you want and get your way over. So that's one way to get over 6 digits of contributions without doing the cash balance plan. But it's a per individual conversation. It's tell me about your business. This is the kind of information you're giving me. Yes, you are a controlled group. No, you're not. And then you kind of just go from there.
Okay. Very interesting. A lot to think about there. Because I want to save the max amount. And I know the simple IRA is not doing it. Right now, what I do is I max out all those things whatever I'm set up on, and then I throw in everything in the mutual funds.
Yeah. And it's simple IRAs can sometimes be overly simple.
Right.
Honestly, simple IRAs are very difficult. Payroll integration and automation is huge part of the conversation, because there's a lot of small businesses that don't have the HR staff, and they don't have management. The owner is wearing multiple hats, so they want to simplify things. Integration is very easy these days in 2022. There is almost no integration in a simple IRA. Integration is very easy in a 401k, and it's kind of almost it's expected these days.
Right.
Technology has gone through the roof, so it's very easy to do that. Then I would say, if you're going from a simple IRA and you want to graduate up to the 401k space, there's the safe harbor is going to be the way to go. It's very similar. The match is going to be similar. There's technically 4 options, but the first 2, there's a standard safe harbor that you're going to match 4. There's a calculation. They have to put in 5 in order for you to put in 4. Whereas the simple, they need to put in 3 for you to put in 3. So you're 100% match on the first 3. And the safe harbor, the standard safe harbor, is 4 on 5. And there's an instant vesting schedule on that too. So you're basically, your employees are not going to say, hey, this is a lesser match, because it's actually higher than what you're offering before. Then there's a QACA safe harbor, it's been around for a long time. It's our most popular, but it's quite unused for some reason. 9 times out of 10, this is what we use for clients. And a QACA is a 3.5% match on 6. So they have to put in 6 in order for you to put in 3.5. And there's a 2-year vesting schedule. It's called a cliff vesting schedule, which is great. Before. So if you want to entice your employees to stay with your company for at least 2 years, then you do a QACA. And it also is an opt-out plan. So you get that extra $500 tax credit.
Nice.
Yeah.
A lot to think about.
I got more.
I got more to tell you.
Yeah.
All right. So like I said, this is a lot to think about. It's like I'm a little overwhelmed. So
yeah,
some sort of summary for me would be good.
Yeah. So to simplify it, there's 8 different kinds of plans out there, and trying to do the research on every single one is going to take you as a business owner. It's going to take forever. So we again, it comes down to those 2 questions. What is the main motivation of the plan? Is it for you to save? Is it for taxes, or both? Or is it to retain and recruit high quality employees? And the second question is how much you want to save. And that will back you into everything you need. And actually on our website, we have a calculator for that. So you just kind of type in what your motivation is, and we'll align that for you. And then you can kind of dive deep into that too. And that will answer all your questions, gives you at least a starting point. It takes a long time to make a decision on a retirement plan. So take your time, and it's out there. If you want to accomplish it, it's out there. The question is, what do you have to do to accomplish it?
Right. Awesome. All right. Everyone, Matt said he's more than willing to come on again because there's so much to go over. So leave down in the comments if you'd like him back, and leave your questions. Also, maybe one day we'll go live, and people will submit questions then. But thank you for coming on, Matt. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, website is lifeincrs.com. That's LIFEINCRS.com. And feel free to reach out. You can email me too. I'll give you the link for my email if you have any questions. And you can always ask to have someone give you a call from the company too. So,
all right, awesome. Yeah, everyone, you need someone. This is way too complicated to do on your own. But, all right, Matt. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, Adam.
All right,
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.